Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the owner and founder of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and today I want to talk about a topic I get asked about all the time, which is how do I tell if my partner or if this person I care about or know is a narcissist or a dismissive avoidant attachment style. And let me tell you, there is an extremely big difference between these two. So there are maybe 2 or 3 sort of core characteristics that could overlap, and so I can sort of understand why people get confused, but you really want to educate yourself first. So I'm going to go into, I have my DSM, so literally the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So, this is all the criteria that is used to characterize and define mental disorders. And so keep in mind, this video is not here for you to self-diagnose, for you to diagnose somebody else, this video is here specifically for educational purposes and to provide you with content and material that you can then do further research on or seek help around, okay, or get somebody you love or care about to seek help regarding. So this is meant to sort of educate you into opening further doors, okay? So I'm going to go through the 9 characteristics of narcissistic personality disorder. Then I'm going to go through like where there could be some overlap with the dismissive avoidant attachment style. And then I will sort of show you the difference and the similarities so you can be really clear about how you are making a judgment or an assumption about somebody in your life. Okay. So as we go through these 9 characteristics, keep in mind for all of these 9 points, these, for even if it's 5 of the 9 that you're finding in the person that you care about or the person that you love, or you're thinking of as you're watching this video, keep in mind that these characteristics have to be pervasive. So for example, one of them is entitlement. You can't be like, oh, the one time that they were entitled, and like pervasive essentially means that this characteristic is part of their personality structure. It's something that's showing up all the time. They're entitled at restaurants, they're entitled with family members, they're entitled with how you should be treating them, according to their expectations. They're entitled with friendships, they're entitled, when it comes to breaking rules and thinking that they're above the law. Like there has to be this pervasive characteristic to at least 5 of 9 of the following, okay? So number 1 is a grandiose sense of self-importance. So this could look like, diminishing others, constantly feeling this sort of idea of superiority or grandiosity, or, feeling like you're much more powerful and you mean more than other people. So this is sort of this grandiose sense of self-importance, and it will be permeating. And this can look like, this individual overestimating their accomplishments. Like, let's say they get an award in their business, okay? So, or like in their company, okay? Let's say that they work as, like in the executive area of a company, and they get some kind of award. The next day it's like maybe somebody cuts them off while they're driving and they're like, do you know who I am? Or it would be something that's sort of like out of the norm. Like it's people get awards at companies, and it doesn't mean that you're this like grandiose human being that, it's something that's, it's a success and an accomplishment. But when we overestimate this sense of our accomplishments, and this is sort of happening all the time, this is a characteristic associated with NPD. Number 2, fantasies of unlimited success, power, beauty, or ideal love. Quite honestly, and maybe this is just sort of coincidental based on, who sort of gets brought into my office, because it's not that often that narcissists will really seek out therapy themselves. Oftentimes it's more that their partner brings them in, their husband or wife kind of makes them come in, or something of that sort. But oftentimes the individual with NPD, or oftentimes what I will see is narcissists who have this like idea of ideal love and like the perfect wife and the perfect husband, and I'm gonna find them, and they get very preoccupied with the sense of ideal love. To be honest, there are narcissists who are dismissive avoidant attachment styles for sure, but I would say that there are actually more narcissists who are anxious attachment style. individuals. And the reason for this has to do with sort of the next pieces, sort of the correlation here, is that there's this excessive need for admiration. Well, where are you going to get your admiration? Well, from people. So you're sort of seeking approval consistently. And deep down, I find that there's sort of, there tend to be core wounds of fear of abandonment, fear of feeling unloved, fear of not being good enough. And a lot of these core wounds have some overlap with the anxious attachment style. Now, I am definitely not saying that all anxious attachment style individuals are narcissists. That could not be further from the truth. Way more anxious attachment style individuals are like extreme empaths and overgivers and struggle with boundaries and like extremely nice, extremely loving, extremely kind. But I think that there's this general belief that like, oh, you know, the dismissive avoidant, they must be a narcissist. They can be, but there's more anxious attachment style individuals that I have at least seen in my years and in my research and in talking with other colleagues as well in the same field. So, so the next piece is this excessive admiration piece. So it will be this like, you know, they're very boastful narcissists. They love the center of attention. They need so much to be validated and reinforced, and they just like hunger for this. And they tend to have this really high need for significance. And again, this is pervasive. This isn't something like everybody has, you know, significance is one of the 6 basic human needs. Everybody has that to some degree. But this isn't like I want meaning and purpose in my life, or, you know, this is I like hunger and I feed off of, and my life energy and reinforcement comes from other people. And without that, I am nothing. Like it's such a big deal. And the supply of that or the lack of that totally impacts, you know, the state emotionally that the narcissist is in. Okay. So you will often see narcissists can be quite overachievers because that's their subconscious strategy to get that need met, right? If they're achieving, if they're consistent, if they're showing up, if they're boastful, they're more likely to get narcissistic supply, right? So if I'm sure people who are watching this video are quite familiar, and I won't go into like all of the like love bombing, narcissistic supply. I won't go into all of that in this video. That might be something I will save for a future video when I dive more into this topic. And what I will do when I do that topic is the core subconscious wounds of the narcissist and bring that into more detail as well. So the next thing, the narcissist will believe that they are special or unique, or that, you know, they can only associate themselves with other like high status, special kind of people. I will hear a lot of times the narcissist, I shouldn't laugh, because it's coming from like an innocent place. Like the narcissist on some level is like this wounded child who didn't get their needs met, and part of their psyche is kind of trapped there. And again, I'm not justifying their behaviors. I am just justifying the cause, and I'm explaining the cause. And there's a great quote that I love. Like one of the best quotes I ever read. It wasn't even a quote. It was a line in a book I read years ago. And it said, "He who hates evil merely creates another one." And so it's this idea that when we're hating on somebody, or we hate the narcissist, or we're, you know, so mad at this person, like we're just creating more toxicity in our own body neurochemically. You know, anger is causing a stress response on your nervous system. And then we're spreading more of that toxicity. We're trying to solve a problem at the same level of thinking that creates it. Like by hating on somebody or something, we're actually punishing ourselves, and we are repurposing hate back into the world again. So, you know, I really try when I do these videos to always come from, and you'll see this as this goes on, and as I do a separate video about narcissism, I really try to not approach any of this stuff from like a hateful space. Like we want to understand the core issues, the core wounds, the core problems, and we want to respond to them appropriately and be able to protect ourselves through educating ourselves and bringing more knowledge and awareness to these situations. So I'm getting off topic. So trait number 4, the narcissist tends to believe that they are special or unique, or they're of really high status, and they can only associate with other high status people, and they will tend to I will hear a lot of narcissists say, you know, when I was a kid, I was already at 4 years old doing this, this, and this. And they like to talk about how they were gifted or special, and you can see that all the way back into their childhood because they were so far ahead of their time. Like there's a lot of these references to childhood and giftedness and specialness from that space. So number 5, entitlement. And this is entitlement where like I think everybody has moments of entitlement, feeling like that person shouldn't have cut me off on the road, or, things like that. Those are kind of hints of entitlement in a way, because, in reality, people will cut us off while we're driving, and we all make mistakes while we're driving, and sometimes it just happens. And to resist that and be, feeling furious about that is a sense of entitlement. But this entitlement for the narcissist is pervasive. This is like, my food it's taking so long, it's been 15 minutes and I'm at a restaurant, and I will be furious and I'll yell at the waiter, or I'll give them a hard time, or, I will, if my partner is not fitting my expectations, I will punish them, and I will maybe verbally abuse them, or maybe physically abuse them, or become aggressive or volatile. Like, this sense of entitlement is so strong that, the narcissist reacts with extremely volatile behaviors when their needs for entitlement, or their not needs for entitlement, when their expectation to feel entitled to things is not being met, or sort of reciprocated upon. So this entitlement piece is pervasive, and it's destructive. Sometimes we'll see narcissists who think that they're just above the law, that they're entitled and they're above the law. The narcissist, as the number 6 trait in the DSM, will exploit others for their own gains. So they, maybe they will take information from somebody in the workplace and use that to further themselves. Or maybe they will, whatever it is, it can be like in school, in the workplace, in romantic relationships, in friendships, in family relationships. Like, they have no problem, taking and exploiting others, taking excessively and capitalizing, taking advantage of others for their own interests. Okay. So this can be a very damaging and distracting piece. And keep in mind, if you're going through and you're thinking about this, is this my husband? Is this my wife? Is this my, loved one? You only need 5 of these to be pervasive out of the 9. Number 7 is a lack of empathy. I do find that sometimes the narcissist can empathize in really rare occasions. So lack of empathy doesn't mean zero empathy. It means lack of empathy. It means not as much as other people, and, it's sparing. It's not happening as often. However, the narcissist can also pretend to empathize very well as a strategy to meet their needs, and I will go into that in detail another time. Number 8, the narcissist will be very envious and can often be condescending of others, like always putting others down to put themselves up. And so they'll be really intense about, just making rude comments or mean comments about other people and why they're not good or not enough, and all as a means to sort of boost themselves and project that image of superiority again. And when people are succeeding, it's not like they'll be like, happy for other people's success and appreciative of them and recognizing their hard work. Right away, they'll be pissed. Like, that will be sort of the envious reaction that you'll tend to see. And number 9 is there's a lot of arrogance in the narcissist. So you'll see a lot of narcissist men and women be very arrogant, and we all know what that sort of looks and feels like if we're around that person. And so one of the traits that is very pervasive again in the narcissist that's not listed in the DSM, but it's associated with some of those qualities that I just shared, those 9 pieces, is that the narcissist tends to be extremely manipulative, and that sort of goes into being exploitive. But the narcissist can tend to manipulate really well, lie, spin things around a lot, twist things, deflect things. Like, they can be very manipulative, again, specifically to get their needs met. Okay, so now let's compare those 9 core qualities to the dismissive avoidant and where there's similarities. So number 1, the dismissive avoidant does not want excessive admiration. The dismissive avoidant does appreciate validation, okay, and that usually tends to be one of their love languages, is words of affirmation. But they don't tend to like, the dismissive avoidant tends to not like being the center of attention. They sort of hide from being the center of attention, retract, or they'll be the center of attention for a few moments, and then they get uncomfortable and kind of move on. They tend to want validation, on a fairly consistent basis, but not too much. And they want that validation from the people closest to them. Okay, so again, they don't want validation 24/7. They don't want validation from everybody and to be the center of attention, but they want a little bit of validation, and they want it in consistent and smaller doses. If you over-validate the dismissive avoidant, they retract as well. Okay, so that's a really key piece in there. Another piece is a dismissive avoidant will respond initially to being guilted. So if you're in a relationship with a dismissive avoidant and you're guilting them, and that's not what you want to be doing because it's not healthy, but you will see that they tend to understand your point. The dismissive avoidant, though their brain is not naturally geared towards, it's like their subconscious mind is more geared towards surviving and focusing on their own internal interests rather than others. I'll see a lot of dismissive avoidants who really empathize with people who are being bullied or people who are being excluded, and they can tend to feel like really sorry for these people and individuals. So if you paint a picture and have the dismissive avoidance focus about something that is sad or a sad story or situation, the dismissive avoidant definitely empathizes with the situation, okay? And they respond to guilt. They actually feel guilt quite strongly. And so that's really important. Number 3, or third point in here, is the dismissive avoidant is not grandiose. They can have moments like any other human being of feeling like a little bit boosted or a little excited about something because they got a reward again in the workplace, or they just got engaged, or they just, whatever it is. But they're definitely not grandiose. They tend to be more introverted by nature, the dismissive avoidants. Not always the case, but often. And they tend to need a lot of time alone and space to themselves, whereas the narcissist is sort of always seeking out and trying to get that narcissistic supply, be around people, kind of extract that from other individuals. And again, the dismissive avoidant actually recharges more, not through other people, but through time alone with themselves, okay? Whereas the narcissist is sort of recharging through, filling up their narcissistic supply. Next, the dismissive avoidant, again, they can definitely empathize, but it's more internalized empathy. So they do feel guilt and they can empathize. And we won't often see it unless we're paying close attention or asking the right questions of the dismissive avoidant, because dismissive avoidants in general, their emotional processing is a very internalized experience. So they could be feeling extreme empathy, as I often see as I dig into the dismissive avoidant. They often feel extreme empathy, but they're not outwardly expressing it. So sometimes we won't recognize it because we're not looking or asking the proper questions. Another piece that's so important, the dismissive avoidant is cold and can be standoffish, but not arrogant. And there's a difference. They're not exhibiting these haughty behaviors and arrogance and sort of this, superiority again. They can be standoffish and cold. They're slow to warm up because they have some natural distrust or feelings, deep subconscious associations around connecting with people and feeling rejected or emotionally in pain. So keep in mind that's a big difference, okay? Another really important piece, and where you'll see some of these similarities, so those are the key differences. Where you will see similarities is sometimes the dismissive avoidant can seem entitled because they're a little bit selfish by nature. Imagine that you were, as a child, deprived of your emotional needs almost altogether and went through emotional neglect and maybe felt like you were kind of out for yourself and associated deep connection with rejection, and you had to protect yourself. If these are the core patterns that you're carrying into a romantic relationship or a relationship period, then you're going to be out for yourself a little bit more. The dismissive avoidant tends to have a deep subconscious belief system or association that everybody's kind of out for themselves, and they think that that's the status quo. And so they assume that, and they act accordingly. And so, that's really important. Sometimes it can seem selfish, and sometimes it can seem a little bit entitled. But if the dismissive avoidant tends to take advantage of other people, because sometimes they do, or they can, it's not even that they take advantage as much as they can be more of takers than givers by nature. If this is happening, it's because they're feeling like they don't have a lot to give. It's not coming, for the narcissist, there's kind of, and not always, but often, a premeditated component or a piece of awareness in there that's oh, I can take this from this person and I can get rewarded, or I can take this and look what happens if I do that. And so the narcissist will tend to have these sort of manipulative strategies, whereas a dismissive avoidant will really only take if they're being given things. They're not out seeking to take or looking for where they can peer and take advantage of things. They're more they tend to just naturally attract anxious attachment style individuals who, for the most part, in relationships are quite giving people, with a few exceptions of if they're a narcissist or some other challenging personality disorders or associations that can occur across the attachment styles. So again, the dismissive avoidant will not consciously really take advantage. They might have some piece of awareness, but not like the narcissist who's sort of creating these manipulative strategies for exploitation. So, and if their needs are not getting met, if they are, let's say they can be a little bit selfish or a little bit takey, if somebody doesn't, meet their expectations, they won't freak out and become furious like the narcissist. They won't become aggressive or volatile. They might sort of pull back and withdraw into themselves, but they won't become aggressive and angry and furious. And so these are some key differentiating factors between the dismissive avoidant and the narcissist. And again, for the narcissist, you want to have 5 of those 9 personality characteristics, and they have to be pervasive. For the dismissive avoidance, there's a lot of the differences there. And even when the dismissive avoidant can be seeming a little entitled or exploitive, is it exploitative? No, exploitive, I think. I've had a long day. If that's the case, then it's still usually happening not pervasively. It's usually happening, in key moments or with certain people or people that they feel really close to, things of that sort. So I hope this was helpful to help you tell the difference, because I get so many clients who ask me the difference about their partner, about their husband or their wife or their friend or brother, sister, and there tends to be a lot of confusion there. So I hope this was useful. If you're getting a lot of value out of these videos, please like them, share them, subscribe to our channel, and please visit www.personaldevelopmentschool.com for worksheets, for client inquiries, for upcoming courses, workshops, and all that amazing stuff. Thank you so much for watching.